The Cessna 172 jolted fiercely as two F-16s roared by, their jet wash nearly tumbling the small aircraft. Sarah clenched her jaw, her blonde hair lashing in the chaos, fingers gripping the yoke so tightly her knuckles paled. Below, Nellis Air Force Base scarred the Nevada desert like a wound. A voice crackled through the radio. Unidentified aircraft, land immediately or we'll force you down. Before she could respond, an F-16's underbelly loomed in her windshield, close enough to see every rivet. The warning was unmistakable: land or face destruction. 20 minutes later, Sarah knelt on the blistering tarmac, hands clasped behind her head, encircled by armed security forces. Colonel David Harper bent down, his eyes burning with command and barely restrained fury. "Who do you think you are? You could have been a terrorist." Sarah stayed silent, her gaze unwavering. They saw a reckless trespasser, but they missed the deeper truth. She had created what they now dreaded most. And now, they'd unwittingly handed her a platform. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she looked like someone you'd breeze past in a supermarket aisle without a second thought. At 35, her wheat blonde hair was tied back in a plain ponytail, and she wore a weathered leather flight jacket, its best days long gone. The name patch, barely legible, read Mitchell in faded gold thread. Her jeans were functional, her boots worn, and she moved with the quiet assurance of someone who had nothing left to prove. But a closer look revealed more. Her stride held a military crispness despite her civilian attire. Her gray-blue eyes scanned every exit, every person, every potential danger without turning her head. She favored her right leg slightly, a hint of an old wound that lingered. Around her neck, tucked beneath her collar, hung a silver chain with a twisted metal fragment. Not a charm, but shrapnel, smoothed by years of absent-minded touch. She lived alone in a cabin 20 miles outside Beatty, Nevada, where the desert stretched endlessly. Her nearest neighbor was 7 miles away, which was just how she liked it. The cabin was stark but tidy, save for one striking feature: a wall plastered with decade-old aviation charts, marked with penciled routes and notes, faded but never erased. On a plain wooden desk sat a single cracked photo frame holding an image of a woman in an Air Force flight suit, beaming beside an F-22 Raptor, her eyes alight with purpose and pride. That woman resembled Sarah Mitchell but seemed a stranger to her. That woman hadn't yet learned that doing what's right could strip you of everything. Colonel David Harper was savoring the moment. For 3 years as base security commander, he'd built a reputation for unyielding discipline and zero leniency. The woman kneeling before him was the perfect opportunity to flex his authority, to show the 200 airmen watching that security was no game. "You know what I think," he said, circling her like a hunter. "You're either a spy or some delusional civilian who thinks rules don't apply to her. Which is it?" Sarah stayed quiet, her eyes locked on the horizon, which only fueled Harper's anger. "Answer me when I'm speaking." He grabbed her shoulder, jerking her to face him. Lieutenant Colonel Emily Carter, the air traffic controller who'd scrambled the F-16s, stepped forward. "Sir, she's not talking. Should I call psych?" Carter smirked. "Probably some wannabe pilot who learned to fly from YouTube tutorials. They all think they're legends until reality crashes in." The airmen snickered uneasily. Some looked uneasy but stayed silent under their superior's weight. Master Sergeant James Vaughn, head of base security, joined the fray. "Ma'am, I'm searching your plane now, and when I find your anti-government manifesto or conspiracy garbage, we'll slap domestic terrorism on your charges." They hauled her belongings from the Cessna in a canvas sack, dumping them carelessly on the tarmac. Vaughn rifled through them with exaggerated disdain. "Look at this," he said, holding up the framed photo. "She's got pics of military jets. Probably some stolen valor case. He tossed it aside, the frame splintering further on impact. And what's this? He pulled out her logbook, filled with meticulous records of every flight over the past decade. Jesus, these flight hours. Lady, did you swipe this from a real pilot? Major Ethan Brooks, commander of the F-16 squadron that intercepted her, swaggered over in his flight suit, helmet still on. My guys could have smoked you in seconds, he boasted loudly. You're lucky we don't shoot down crazy civilians, though sometimes I think we're too lenient. The humiliation built systematically, each officer trying to outshine the last. Carter pulled up Sarah's flight plan on her tablet, mocking its precision. Look, she even tried to file correctly. Probably cribbed it from a real pilot's work. The sun blazed relentlessly, the tarmac radiating heat like a furnace. Sarah's knees throbbed against the concrete, her hands numbing behind her head, but she stayed silent as Harper ranted about civilians who didn't know their place. It was Harper who struck the cruelest blow. He fished out her wallet, brandishing her driver's license with flair. Sarah Mitchell, age 35. No military ID, no credentials, nothing. Just a nobody playing pilot. He turned to the crowd, his voice swelling with righteous fury. What burns me most is the disrespect. Men and women train for years to earn the right to fly here. They sacrifice, bleed, die for it. And you, he jabbed a finger at Sarah, thought you could just stroll in like you own the sky. Vaughn found her emergency supplies, basic medical gear, water, flares. Prepared for everything except common sense, he quipped, drawing more uneasy chuckles. Brooks kicked her plane's tires. This relic belongs in a scrapyard, not the air. How many regs is she breaking just flying this junk? The young airman laughed nervously, some visibly uneasy but too disciplined to speak up. Sarah saw it in their faces, the doubt, the questions about whether this was just, but military order kept them mute. Harper wasn't done. This is what happens when civilians forget their place, when they think they're equal to warriors. He gestured at her worn clothes, her simple appearance. Look at her. She's nothing. A nobody trying to play in our arena. Then something shifted in Sarah's expression, not rage, but something profound, forged over a decade of silence, a decade of bearing a burden that would have broken most. She thought of Lily, always Lily, and the drawing clutched in tiny hands during the crash, a sketch of an angel with airplane wings. She thought of 47 children who never grew up because someone followed orders blindly. She thought of how she'd been erased, stripped of all she'd earned, blamed for having a moral compass in a system that prized obedience. Colonel Harper, Sarah spoke at last, her voice a low murmur but cutting through the silence. I need to make a phone call. Harper barked a laugh. A call? To your lawyer? Your husband? Sorry, sweetheart. You're not calling anyone until we're through with NORAD. Sarah pressed on, her voice still soft but laced with iron. Authentication code, Ghost Eagle 77734. The laughter stopped cold. Carter paled, her tablet clattering to the ground. That's an ultra-clearance code, she whispered. Only 12 people in the country have those. Vaughn's hand froze near his holster. Brooks stepped back instinctively. Only Harper, too wrapped in his own power, missed the gravity of the moment. What kind of joke, sir? Carter cut in, her voice trembling. Those codes are real. They're for people with classified knowledge so sensitive that she couldn't finish. Sarah slowly lowered her hands and rose, her movements deliberate. For the first time, she met Harper's eyes directly. Colonel, I've been patient. Now I need that call. Vaughn was already on his radio, his voice quaking. Control, we need immediate verification on a Ghost Eagle code. The reply was swift and frantic. All units, stand down. Repeat, stand down now. The base's emergency screens flickered to life. General Margaret Collins, Air Combat Command's top officer, appeared, her face shifting from shock to recognition to something like grief. "My God, Sarah Mitchell." The silence was absolute. 200 airmen stood rooted, their world unraveling. Collins' voice boomed across the tarmac, each word a detonation. "Colonel Harper, have you lost your mind? Do you know who you just detained?" Harper tried to speak, but only croaked. Collins pressed on, her voice sharpening. "That woman designed half the security protocols you say she broke. She literally wrote the manual on restricted airspace." The general paused, then continued more measuredly. "Colonel Mitchell has ultra clearance because she holds knowledge critical to national security. Knowledge she's kept quiet for a decade, despite every reason to speak out. But she's—" Harper gestured weakly at Sarah's civilian clothes, her battered plane. "She's not in the system. She's not military. She's not in the system," Collins said slowly, "because we erased her from it. My predecessor ensured that when he needed a scapegoat for his own colossal failure. The truth unraveled like a waking nightmare, each revelation more shattering than the last. Sarah Mitchell refused to kill 47 children in Syria," Collins said, her voice hardening. "She was court-martialed for having a conscience. And while she was detained for doing the right thing, her 5-year-old daughter died in a car accident." Carter found her voice, barely a whisper. "The Syrian school bombing, that was you? You're the pilot who refused the order." Sarah neither confirmed nor denied, standing with quiet dignity despite all she'd endured. Collins wasn't done. "And Harper, that medical supply run she was flying? It's for the Veterans Administration Clinic at Indian Springs, specifically for the burn unit treating pilots injured in training mishaps. She's flown those runs for free for 8 years, delivering supplies to veterans in that old plane because she believes in service, even after we ruined her life for it." Harper staggered under the weight of it all. Sarah nodded gently. "You didn't know?" she said, her voice steady, without blame. That was the point. The realization crushed the onlookers like a suffocating shroud. They'd mocked a woman who'd sacrificed everything for principles they upheld. They'd ridiculed someone who served those who'd betrayed her. Sarah had humiliated a woman who'd lost all, but chose to rise above it. Sarah took it gently, tracing the crack. "Some things are meant to stay broken, Sergeant. They remind us of the cost of mending what should never have been shattered." The transformation was absolute. The woman they dismissed as a nobody had revealed herself as a figure whose choices had defined the very rules they enforced. She'd paid the ultimate price, her career, her freedom, her daughter, for refusing to compromise her soul. Harper, who'd built his career on unwavering control, knelt before her. "Colonel Mitchell, I'm so sorry. Please." Sarah, who'd lost everything for refusing to bow, touched his shoulder lightly. "Stand up, Colonel. Kneeling fixes nothing. You did your duty as you saw it." She turned to the airmen, their young faces etched with the lesson she'd just taught. "If you want to honor me, honor those 47 children by remembering every order, every mission, every choice has a human cost. Rank doesn't define right. And sometimes, the hardest thing is to do nothing." Carter approached, tears streaming. "The Syrian children, did you know before the strike?" "I saw them on my sensors," Sarah said simply. "Playing, learning, being kids like Lily was." Her fingers brushed the shrapnel at her throat. Like Lily, the F-16 pilots stood in formation, their flight suits sweat-stained. Brooke spoke for them. "Ma'am, we'd like to escort you out. Honor guard formation. It's the least we can do." Sarah shook her head. "I don't need escorts, Major. I haven't for a long time." She walked to her weathered Cessna, where ground crew were frantically trying to scrub off intruders spray-painted on the fuselage. She traced the plane's skin like an old companion. Besides, she and I have supplies to deliver. Veterans are waiting." As she ran her pre-flight checks, Harper approached one last time, hesitant. "Colonel Mitchell, what you did in Syria, refusing that order, was it worth it? Everything it cost you?" Sarah paused, then smiled faintly, a smile heavy with grief. "Colonel Harper, I dream of those children every night. But in my dreams, they're alive, playing, learning, growing. They become doctors, teachers, parents. That's worth any cost." And Lily, she knew her mother tried to save them. She knew that before she died. "That's the only medal I need." The Cessna's engine sputtered to life, settling into its steady hum. As Sarah taxied toward the runway, every soul on the tarmac, from the youngest airman to Harper himself, snapped a flawless salute. She didn't acknowledge it, didn't need to, but those nearby saw her lips moving, perhaps in prayer, perhaps reciting 47 names like a litany of sorrow and strength. The tower's voice, a young woman who'd stayed silent all day, came through. "Cessna 734, cleared for takeoff. Any heading, any altitude. And ma'am, Ghost Eagle, the skies are yours." They always were. Sarah flew west into the sunset, her battered plane carrying medicine to those in need, as she had every week for 8 years. Behind her, Nellis resumed operations, but nothing would ever be the same. Young airmen would recount this tale in barracks, each version layered with their own grasp of what they'd seen. A woman destroyed for her conscience, yet still serving those who destroyed her. Courage embodied in a weary woman flying an old plane across the desert, asking for nothing. Colonel Harper lingered on the tarmac long after the Cessna vanished, pondering the choices that shape us, the line between orders and morality, and how true victory lies not in wielding power, but in knowing when to withhold it. Some wars are won with dignity, not power. Sarah Mitchell had won hers the moment she chose 47 Syrian children over her career, her freedom, her future. She'd won it every day for a decade, flying supplies to veterans, wearing the shard of her daughter's car seat against her heart. And she'd won it today by refusing to let shame reduce her. The question hung in the desert air, haunting Harper and every witness. If you were her, carrying that pain, that loss, that injustice, would you forgive? Would you serve those who'd wronged you? Would you choose dignity over vengeance? Sarah had made her choice 12 years ago in Syrian skies and never stopped making it. Every flight, every delivery, every quiet mile across the desert was her reply. 3 months later, Harper transferred to a veterans hospital, spending his career's final years aiding wounded warriors. Carter left the service to teach flying, instilling in young pilots that technology must serve humanity, never the other way around. Brooks created a scholarship for children of fallen pilots. They all carried Sarah's lesson. True strength lies not in destruction, but in building, healing, serving, even when the world gives you every reason to harden. The Cessna flew on, a desert ghost carrying hope to those in need. On clear days, when sunlight glinted off the windshield, controllers swore they saw an angel with airplane wings, reminding them that some victories are won not with weapons, but with the quiet resolve to stay human in a world that rewards machines. Sarah's greatest triumph wasn't surviving her disgrace. It was choosing daily to transcend it. If you were her, would you forgive? The desert knows her answer, murmuring it in every grain, every endless sky. Some aren't broken by injustice. They're forged by it. Sarah Mitchell was one such soul. In a world craving heroes who looked like ordinary people doing extraordinary things, she was precisely what we needed, whether we deserved her or not. If you love this story, hit that subscribe button to join our Everyday Life Stories community. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? We love connecting with our incredible global audience.